Welcome, friends, to this house of prayer for all people. Tonight, around 6 p.m., a Jewish congregation will gather in this place to celebrate the beginning of Passover. But today, two Christian congregations gather. It has become a tradition between the Park Avenue United Methodist Church, the Park Avenue Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, United Church of Christ, for us to gather on Good Friday to remember on this day. We're glad that you have come. We welcome our guest, our preacher today, and all of you who have come. There is at the back index cards, and I'd like to pick up one if you'd like, and after Dr. Cathy's sermon, there will be a moment for us to, if you'd like to come to the cross to pray, and if there's a prayer or hope or wish or care or burden you'd like to leave at the cross, there are tacks there. You can just tack it to the cross and maybe use the hammers to just nail it, and it'll just be a time of quiet silence and reflection and prayer as we come to the cross. Won't you stand as you are able for the greeting? We come here today to remember a man who had dreams, who had those dreams shattered, who needed time to think and pray, who knew he was likely to die for what he believed. A man of extraordinary religious insight, a man who did die a cruel death. On this day, we look at the cross and we remember the betrayal of friendship and its consequences, the casual cruelty of Roman authority and execution, and how unreliable others proved to be in a crisis. On this day, may we also remember that religious bigotry, cruelty, and unreliability are still a part of our everyday lives. On this day, then, may we learn some new precepts for living. Do not avoid contact with suffering, or close your eyes before suffering. Do not maintain anger or hatred. Do not say untruthful things for the sake of personal interest or to impress people. Do not live with a vocation that is harmful to humans and nature. On this day, we remember. And so we gather to remember the one who was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. In his body upon the tree, that we may die to sin and live to righteousness.
A reading from the prophet Isaiah. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. Yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was punished. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities.
Please join me in the responsive psalm. My God, why have you forsaken me, and are so far from my cry and from the words of my distress? O my God, I cry in the daytime, but you do not answer, by night as well, but I find no rest. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Yet you are the Holy One, enthroned upon the praises of Israel. Our ancestors put their trust in you. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried out to you and were delivered. They trusted in you and were not put to shame. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? But as for me, I am a worm and no man, scorned by all and despised by the people. All who see me laugh me to scorn. They curl their lips and wag their heads, saying, he trusted in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him if he delights in him. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Be not far from me, for trouble is near, and there is none to help. Many young bulls encircle me, strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their jaws at me like a ravening and a roaring lion. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Packs of dogs close me in, and gangs of evildoers circle around me. They pierce my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them. They cast lots for my clothing. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Be not far away, O Lord. You are my strength. Hasten to help me. Save me from the sword, my life from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, my wretched body from the horns of wild bulls. God, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Now a reading of the Passion of Jesus Christ according to St. John. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who had betrayed him, knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus knew all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then the detachment of soldiers, with its commander and the Jewish officials, arrested Jesus. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people.
Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanliness, they did not enter the palace, because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law. But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is the truth?" retorted Pilate. With that, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of Passover. Do you want me to release the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising.
Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, the King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. Once more Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!" "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priest answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified.
When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarment remaining. This garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. "Let's not tear it," they said to one another. "Let's decide by lot who will get it." This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled that said, "They divided my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment." So this is what the soldiers did. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so that scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I am thirsty." A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
My God, why hast thou forsaken me?" We hear these words from Jesus today as he nears death. It is about the 9th hour. He had stretched high upon the cross, an emblem of suffering and shame. These words are words among other words. "Father, forgive them. Today you will be with me in paradise. Woman, behold your son. I thirst." But somehow these 10 words, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" grip us in a whole other way. At least they do for me. It is one thing to be betrayed by Judas, a mere mortal made of flesh like us, and to be denied by Peter, sadly a close friend, but who among us has not disappointed a friend here or there? It is one thing that all the other disciples fled in fear when the going got tough. But now this cry, spoken with such clarity and such anxiety, and the moment of abandonment when all appears lost, when what he had imagined cannot be compared to the reality of the present moment, and God seems silent. The one who had called him the beloved, silent. The one to whom he had committed his entire being, whose fellowship was unparalleled, silent. The one who had promised, "I will never leave you, nor will I forsake you. And lo, I am with you always, even until the end of the age. Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." That God is silent. You know, my brothers and sisters, there is physical pain. Some of us know about that, don't we? But the greatest pain of all sometimes is the pain of the heart, that ache when it appears that we are all alone. No one cares or understands. No one stands with us or for us. And of all things, this is what we count on God for, isn't it? The entire season of Advent prepares us to receive the God who is present, the God who comes to be with us. It is the one thing we hang our hats on in the day-to-day realities of our lives. God is with us. And so these words of Jesus pierce not only our ears, but also our hearts, for they remind us of just how human he really was. They remind us of just how much he is aligned with our own dark days and troubled nights. Those moments of despair in which we can no longer detach ourselves. The problem is no longer over there, it's right here, right now, with me, with us. And they shake us at our core, and we feel as if we cannot go on any longer. And worse yet, all that we have heard, and all that we have believed, and all that we have talked about God being present no longer seems valid. On Good Friday, we hear these words of Jesus, and we know that they are spoken for us. Theologian Frederick Tickner writes, though God is not there for him to see or hear, he, Jesus, calls on him still, because he can do no other. Not even the cross, not even death, not even life can destroy his love for God. Not even God can destroy his love for God. Because the love he loves God with, it's God's love empowering him to love in return with all of his heart, even when his heart is all but broken. The promise of this holy day is this, that the darkness of our lives and this world do not have the final say. For resurrection morning is coming, and God will no longer be silent. God will speak, and Jesus will take his rightful place. On this day, more than 2,000 years ago, Jesus was crucified, gave up his own life as a sign and as a reminder to a troubled world that the episodic interruption of Calvary is not the mainstay of what God has intended. Hidden in the murkiness of the cross and the crisis and the abandonment and the chaos is a promise of a brand new day. This is what Christ has done for us, so that we do not have to live in the crisis of our lives as though they were the only option. This is what Christ has done for us, to align himself with our own suffering and the suffering of others, and that we too are to align ourselves with the suffering of one another. That's why we come to the cross on Good Friday of all days. We come to hear the story and to remember the cries, to take our place at the foot of the cross, to take it all in, every excruciating detail, even to pick up our own cross, whatever they may be, as if for the very first time we come boldly to the cross and we carry them around, knowing that in order to be fully one of his, we too must pick up our cross and follow his way. Somehow between the glad hosannas of Palm Sunday and the glory of Easter morning, we come by here to listen, to learn, to die, so that we can live, but also so that we can face the future with hope, and so that when we trudge through the dark nights and experience our own loneliness and despair, when we experience those moments of abandonment and fear, when we reach the valley of the shadow of death, and there's no place else for us to go. And when someone asks us, how did you get through it all? Why did you not give up along the way? How were you able to press on anyhow? To not give up in despair? When someone looks at us and they can't figure it out, we can humbly say, I was there. I was there. I stood there at the foot of the cross. I saw my lover take his place for me, and I know that he lives. Oh yes, he lives.